Welcome to the Spiritual Underground Podcast. Once again, this is Dan coming to you from the wood shop at DTM Enterprises, my little wood shop in the backyard. Get a couple of these commercials out of the way real quick. Go to spiritualunderground.org for show notes and pictures of the guests that are on the show. There's also a contact me page there. Welcome any feedback you have for me, or if you want to be on the show. I have just recently learned how to do these things remotely too, so that we can record a podcast with you wherever you are. I would like to hear your story, and the fact of the matter is that everybody's story needs to be heard. There's at least one person out there that will connect with what you have to say, and maybe and then they will end up potentially changing their life, making a change to what they're doing because they heard that you did it. The music wrapped around this. Actually, today the music wrapped around this is a song or some music by the guest today. So we'll talk about that as we get going here, and I'll just leave that alone because I don't remember the name of the song, and I'll just get with you, Jim, in just a minute to do that to get that information. So I'm going to wrap his music around it. What else? 12-Step Spiritual Recovery. Go out to Amazon, get the book by James Christopher Cone. It is this thing that's changed my life and the life of so many in my tribe, working the 12 steps in this optimized way that is described in that book. It's laid out. You don't have to have an ism. You don't have to be an alcoholic. You don't have to be anything. You can just, if you just have a little bit of room for better in your life, I can promise you, I can actually guarantee that working these steps and applying these principles in your life will create a little bit better. And I think what you're actually going to find is going to be a whole lot better, but I don't want to sell you that. I'll sell you a little bit because you might buy a little bit. TSSR is what we're calling it, 12-Step Spiritual Recovery by James Christopher Cone on Amazon. You can get a hard copy of it or Kindle version. Also, when you do that, please go out and leave a review. It's real important in all these sites like that we support one another and we leave reviews. That's the way the virtual world knows people care, is when we take a minute to put a review out there. So please do that too. So we'll get to today's topic. I'm playing around with this podcast, and then one of the things we had was my yoga. I'll just say my yoga teacher. Let's just say that. I got plenty of them, but the one that owns the studio, and had her come on and talk about how she came to a better way of living through a practice of yoga. I've recently crossed over 600 days of no nicotine. Not. It was cold turkey from 607 days ago. So that's an interesting thing too, is to set down this stuff that's not working for me. And we all know that, and from what I understand, the nicotine's not actually the problem. It's actually the drug. It's the delivery systems that's so bad for you, the dipping and the smoking and all that. And we just know the jury is in. That stuff kills you. It's not a question anymore. And you're sitting around committing suicide slowly, not unlike I did with drugs and alcohol, using the delivery systems that nicotine give me. So I fell into the path of a bunch of guys who were quitting nicotine, and I particularly bonded with one specifically. He has 10 days on the nose more quit on this go around than I do. And we met on a website. We've never actually met face to face, but we've been in constant contact pretty much, on a daily basis for the past 607 days. And so he's got a fascinating story and probably knows more about quitting nicotine than anybody I know, actually. And it has the same kind of story of coming in and using it and having periods of sobriety, so to speak, having periods of quit is what we call it, and then deciding to pick up again. And, that story is the same kind of drum. That's the classic addiction story. So welcome, Jim, to the podcast. I've been looking forward to doing this. We've been talking about it for quite some time.
Yes, we have. And thanks for having me on anyway, Dan. And if I go back and forth between Dan and Dog, we'll get to that, our nicknames and whatnot. But.
Yeah, and that was something I was going to talk to you about before the podcast too. How did you want me to refer to you? Because we got into that whole nicotine quitting thing, and we go by these pseudonyms and these usernames on the site, and that's what my name is. Doggone Hunt on the site. That's been a pseudonym I've used on the net for quite some time. I actually have a YouTube channel. We may talk about that. I did some videos, and I've had it for quite some time. A few things kind of set that down. So if you hear the Dog, that's where that comes from. And Jim is. Do you want to go down that? Just let you have some airtime.
Either the Colonel or Colonel No Cope, as in Copenhagen, which was my my nicotine delivery of choice, and was for quite some time.
Yeah, that I had almost like, so like in my phone, you're still CNC Jim. And so in back then, but like I completely kind of laid that down, and if it's been shortened to the Colonel, and I'll talk about you or talk to you. That's the nicknames on the group meets and the things we use. So I see that. I was also reading back through my little letter, my little manifesto I wrote when we got banned off that website, and I saw that I had your actual username in there. That I think it was Colonel_no_Cope, right?
Yep. That was it.
Yep. So it was actually typed out like that, and I had not seen that written in some time. So we'll bounce around from the Colonel, Dog, and Dan, and Jim. And there's really just two of us here, but it might sound like there's four.
Yeah, well, just like the old days.
Yeah.
Dan number 1, Dog number 2.
Yeah. So, it's been a blast, and this stuff has not been. Quitting nicotine was no picnic for sure, and you've had to go around with it. So one of the things that just like to build this connection with who the personality here is. And I think that's, I keep on beating this little drum as the guy says, connection is the opposite of addiction. We don't think, it says, actually what happens, and I see it like in that site and the way we're doing now, is building connections with one another is really how I stopped using. It wasn't putting down the substance. Yeah, that did it. But it was building connections with other humans that were that had the same goals in alignment with me. To come full circle there, to build this connection with the listeners a little bit, I think it's cool to give an idea about how you grew up, where you came from, what'd you do, that kind of stuff, and what we're just kind of doing what we do in a typical 12-step, and I'm kind of feeling my way through this, is that we say what we tell our story in a general way, what it was like. So that's like what it used to be like, what happened, what the things that made us like decide to change our lives. That's the what happened. And then what it's like now that we're free from the substance or free from the lifestyle, the stuff that we had behind us. So what it was like is kind of like, how you grew up and what brought you to today.
Okay. Well, I'll follow your lead, and you just guide me in the right direction. But October 8th, 2017 is my quit date. So that's 617 days. But in no way, shape, or form the beginning of my attempts to get off of nicotine. And going back, my childhood, both my parents smoked. I mean, they smoked like chimneys, especially my mom. There was never a time that she didn't have a cigarette in her mouth. And they smoked inside. Back in those days, it was not uncommon to walk into an office, a house, and basically fight your way through a fog of cigarette smoke.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was normal, But other than that, I had a wonderful childhood. I had great parents, both of them ex-military. Not for a career, not like me, but mom was in the Army, believe it or not. My mom wore combat boots. It's not an insult to me.
Yeah.
And dad was a Navy guy. So it just, I grew up watching war movies and hearing, the stories from my parents. And I said, that's what I want to do. I want to do that for the rest of my life. You might say I was born to be a soldier.
Yeah.
And which also ties in, unfortunately, into the nicotine thing, be it cigarettes or chew or dip. It was very much a part of that that environment. But I learned, because of my brother, that tobacco's bad. He said it all the time, and Mom, Dad, you need to quit, you're going to die. Now, okay, a kid hears this, and what's he going to do?
Yeah, right. If you want me to do something, tell me not to.
Yeah, Mom, you got to quit smoking. I don't want you to die. Oh, I'm not going to die. Well, okay, but Doug says you are. And I think this was in the 70s when you started, they started putting those Surgeon General, warnings on the packs, and more and more commercials about tobacco being bad. As a kid, you just grab onto that. And you would have thought that I would never, ever touch tobacco of any type in an environment like that. Long story short, with my parents, they both died as a result of their tobacco habit.
Yeah. You almost forget about that, like getting on airplanes and smoking on airplanes. When I first started working at the job that I held for so long, we all had, one of the things, my eyes came open big time when I saw I can sit at my desk and smoke, man. I'd bring my Stanley thermos full of coffee, and you would burn a lot of cigarettes in a day. You didn't smoke that many of them, but man, they sat in the ashtray and burned away, And at the end of the day, you had to show up at work with a couple packs of cigarettes to get through an 8-hour day, because it was almost like burning incense all day or something. And I can't imagine the poor people who sat around me. And now today, to think about how insensitive it was to sit there by these other people and just fog them with my cigarette smoke.
Yeah, but it was so
all
normal.
Day. It was completely normalized. Yep.
And I had a buddy, a lieutenant friend of mine at my first unit. He had a dip in his mouth, a cigarette, and a huge jug of coffee. And he drank black coffee. And that guy, my goodness, he was juiced the entire day.
Yeah.
And I think about it now, and, that would have given me a headache, let alone a heart attack.
Yeah, I just can't. It just doesn't even compute anymore to think about that.
But as we'll no doubt tell stories upon stories about how stupid we were.
Yeah. So did you start? About what time? Well, let me ask you this: since you were in the military, you probably bounced around, didn't you? Or did you have a solid foundation where you grew up in a certain location?
No, I bounced all over the world.
And it's not solid. That's not the right word, but you know what I mean. More a static,
static
location. So yeah, you were all over the place. So that's interesting. That's a tough life to grow. That's a tough place to do. And some of the stuff is peer pressure, I'm sure. So do you remember when you had your when you decided to first use some nicotine?
Yes, I do. Gosh, and like all guys, well, I'll say all guys, but
yep, that's okay.
Air quotes. I was doing it to look cool, to impress the girls,
Yeah.
At this bar, back when you could smoke in bars, at my college, you could get into a bar at 19, but you couldn't drink until you're 21. We all know how that goes.
Mm-hmm.
But there were guys smoking and guys dipping, and here I am in ROTC. I wanted to be that tough guy that really part of the cool crew, and that's where I lit my first cigarette. I wish I never had, but I didn't. Unlike Bill Clinton, I really did not inhale.
Oh, really?
I just let it dangle there because I thought it was cool.
Yeah. How old do you think you were?
Oh gosh, I was 19.
Okay, all right. So you were. Wow, you waited a while. I started.
Yeah.
I know I picked up my first. I don't really know when I first started dipping. I think I was, or not dipping. Actually, my first remembrance of tobacco was my grandfather's Mammoth Cave chewing tobacco that came in like a rope. It was dry.
Ooh.
And you had to cut a piece off with a pocket knife. And I saw him doing that. And when he walked off, I went, I'm going to get me some of that. And I remember not liking it one bit, but that was the first time because I got that buzz from the nicotine. And then later on, it wasn't very much past that. I was in my, I was 14 or so. Best I can remember, I took some of my mom's cigarettes because she smoked too. And took a few of her Marlboro Reds and went and I still remember, almost not be able to stand up. I had to lean against something so that I could keep my balance.
Oh yeah, and when I tell you about my first actual nicotine adventure, I was the same way. It was so powerful, I couldn't stand up.
Yeah,
I was so damn dizzy, and but yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm listening to you. I just kind of want to chime in on the first. I want to make a point. I don't know why, but I like to know about what age somebody was when they first stepped into it. So you actually escaped that. Growing up with the cloud of nicotine around you for a while. At 19, you actually made it, in my mind, quite a ways before deciding to pick some of that stuff up.
Yeah, but if you think about it, and everybody talks about secondhand smoke and secondhand buzz and all that.
Yeah.
For all I know, I've been juiced on nicotine my entire life and just didn't know it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's the first time you actually purposely used. You've been using since you were a kid.
Yeah, and the first time I tried dip, we were at the same bar. It was named O'Malley's. It was truly a basement bar. Just filthy environment, just sticky floors, and it was packed every Friday. I mean, you were fighting to get through the crowd holding these small cups of beer and spilling it all over each other. And then one of my buddies, this super badass, this guy, when I looked at him, I said, this guy's going to be Special Forces, guaranteed.
Wow.
And yeah, and believe it or not, years later, that's exactly what he is. But he dipped Kodiak. And he looks at me and goes, I see you're curious. You want some? And of course, I'm not going to say no, because I'm going to be the tough guy too.
Yeah, right.
And all I remember is once that nicotine kicked in and I got that super buzz, Brad said my head was in the garbage can. I hacking it up, spitting it out, trying to rinse out my mouth, but it was the most incredible feeling that I've ever had. Well, ultimately, some people probably had similar experiences with other substances, but I just was like, you know what? I don't like this, but I think I could get used to it.
Oh, yeah. Interesting.
And the next time I actually did it willingly, I was out in the field on a field exercise. I think I was still a cadet. And I tried Copenhagen. We were on a patrol. We were tired. We'd been up walking through the woods all night. And I bummed some Copenhagen off of a buddy. And as we were all, I was in the kneeling position. Basically, we called it pulling security, security halt. And I put that in, and my head started spinning. But I was prepared for it this time. It kept me awake. It made me alert. And that was truly, at that point, the beginning of my my true addiction. Because after that, I quit bumming, started buying, and then ended up with a very serious habit.
I don't know if I remember this and if this is true or not, but I seem to recall something about Copenhagen having a lot more addictive quality, a lot more nicotine than even the other kinds of dip.
And I say it's true only because of all the other dips that I've tried. They all tasted like candy. They would sweeten it up with sugar or you got the peppermints and the spearmints. And I know there's probably going to be listeners that are laughing at me. But to me, that was all candy.
Yeah.
And Copenhagen has a very gritty, salty flavor to it. And it's basically like a shot in the arm. But in this case, a shot in the lip. Because it's going straight into your bloodstream. Faster than a cigarette.
Yep.
And it's just instantaneous high. And tell me that the first time you get something like that, tell me you're not going to go, wow, this is cool.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. I always dipped Grizzly, I dipped Skull Long Cut straight. I didn't like the real fine particles, and I remember somebody sharing some Copenhagen with me, but man, it's like I couldn't keep that together in my mouth. I couldn't keep that dip under control. And then
we called them floaters.
Yeah, somebody shared some long cut with me at that point, and I remember, and it was Skull Long Cut straight back then, because there was something else and somebody had also, I'd tampered around or played around with some of the mint ones too, but they didn't do me. I just couldn't, for whatever reason, I didn't like it. But man, that Skull Long Cut straight, man, when my buddy gave that to me, and I remember I was at a ballpark. I was a little league baseball player when the first time somebody gave that to me, and then and back then we didn't, there wasn't any issue with going to the store and buying dip at 12, 14. I don't really know. Again, when you listen to my story, I tell you the timeline doesn't work. I got no idea when. Another one I think is I say, if I knew I was going to have to retell this story, I'd have kept better track.
Exactly. I would have had better notes too.
Yeah, once I found that, and then the Skull got outpriced, and somebody turned me on to the Grizzly, and then forever and ever, and I don't really remember, again, this timeline and how long it's been around. I would tell you that Grizzly is a fairly new product, but it probably, fact of the matter, I've probably been dipping it for 20 years. I don't really know.
Oh, I think I was when I finally got around to getting my act together. I think it was a 20-year habit, and I started on Skull long cut as well. As a regular, because with like you, I had problems with the control of the turd in the lip,
Yep.
And I would get the floaters, and it was not my thing then. I was not skilled at my addiction. So yeah, I did the Skull long cut. It stayed together better. But when I can't remember why I think so many more guys that I was serving with did Copenhagen than Skull.
Yep.
It just became easier for us to bum dips off of hey man, you got a can?
Yeah.
As long as they weren't double dippers.
Right, and we do that a lot in a lot of different places in our lives. I tended to, like, me and my buddies all drank the same kind of beer. It was just convenient for the most part. We could share beers. We all had, we when I went to get some, so I would think the same thing. Me and my brother and the guys around me dipped the same brand.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird. You form a clique in a way, or your dependency group.
Yep.
Because by God, hey, if I don't have some, I know Joe around the corner. He's got to have some.
Right.
I have to have it.
Yep. Yeah, you go on a fishing trip or whatever, and you knew you had some backup because between the two of you, you'd probably have enough.
Yeah, exactly. And it's horrible, but it's the same story for pretty much every substance I can think of.
Yep.
You start hanging around. People call them that's the bad element, but they were sporting what you needed.
Yep. And the flip side of that is, man, when you start getting low, man, it's like, yeah, do you have any? Well, man, I'm running low. I'm not looking to share all of a sudden.
Yeah. I only got enough for one last dip, and that's enough to get me to the store.
Yeah, right.
God knows how many times I said that. No, man, I don't have another cigarette for you. I don't have enough dip to get me to the store already.
Yeah, and you said a word a minute ago about being when you were out on that, and I think, and forgive me because I don't have any military background. Oh man, I don't like that doing that. Did that change anything? Yeah, it did.
No. Oh.
Ha! I turned my mute on. I wonder how I'm gonna be able to do that. Have an email pop up and it makes a singing song in my phone in here, and none had to try. But that's side the point. People just have to deal with a little bit of that. This is, as I've said, my podcast is raw and natural. And if the dog comes in barking or my compressor starts up or I get an email, you're just going to get that. It's not a highly produced, sterile environment. So going back to that.
And I'm hardly refined myself, so it'll be perfect.
And I try to do all that, and I'm just not that polished, and I'm not going to pretend to be. So what you said when you were out on patrol, I think is what you were saying. That's where I started apologizing. I have this habit of apologizing for my deficiency. So when I don't know something, I want to put it out there in front to go, hey, I'm sorry I don't know much about this, but here, I'll try to break that habit. But anyway, you're out on patrol. So the third I heard you say is that you put that dip in, man, in your alertness. The fact that how much and that's one thing I still remember, and I'd forgotten that, like, until you just said it. There'd be times when I'm like a little bit like even better than coffee or something, but like the combination of a big fat dip and some coffee, and then I'm on point, right? I'm laser beam focused, man. And yeah, that nicotine sure did, man. It really did. It kept me alert. It kept me at what I thought was at some performance level that I needed to be at.
And that's what I was just going to add. I thought of it as a performance enhancer. I couldn't stay awake without this, so I'll forget about the health hazard, and because I need to be alert, I need to have my act together. Because by God, the mission needs me on my toes at all times.
Right.
Kind of silly, and all that young bravado crap. Hell, I could have stood in, back then, you could stand in front of a tank and the tank ain't going to make a dent in you because you're invincible.
Yeah. The Superman complex is what we call it.
Yeah. And I really, I might not come out and say it, but I believed that.
Right.
I'm not going to be one of those old broken down 50-year-olds. Well, look at me now.
Right. Yeah. It won't happen to me.
Yep. These guys just didn't take good care of themselves. They weren't watching out for these, the hazards of growing old. My God, I'm going to be better.
Yeah. Right.
And
so a hero common theme too, and that's another thing. And it seemed like, and I'm not really sure, this could be an illusion too, but man, the nicotine world, and specifically for dipping in the military, seems like everybody that was in service someplace seems to dip. I mean, even some of the female dippers we know, and I know, that's actually where they started dipping, was while they were serving our country.
I believe it. And what's funny is, okay, you say you don't have any military experience, but since you were you were in sports,
mm-hmm.
and the way nicotine, especially dipping or chewing, more chewing for ball players back then, I believe. But it was, if you didn't, you weren't, you just weren't serious about, what you were doing. And so the same in the Army, it was, and I don't believe this, but it was kind of a common saying was, officers dipped, enlisted men smoked.
Oh, really?
Somebody actually had the balls to tell me that as I was standing there smoking a cigarette. And I was a captain. Like, you know what? That just made me smoke harder.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, nobody's going to tell me anything. That's judgmental. Come on now. Get off your high horse. So,
yeah,
I even had a full colonel tell me officers don't smoke. A full colonel told me that.
Really?
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, sir, you know what? He also busted me out about my mustache, too. And come to find out, his wife leans over. We were at one of the clubs in Korea. He's telling me that I shouldn't have a mustache, I shouldn't smoke. And his wife, when he got up to go use the latrine, his wife leaned over and went, Rick used to smoke, and Rick did have a mustache.
Yeah. Well, there's a little bit of there certainly is a thing on these people who are ex whatevers, and I can find myself in that in both my in my 12-step world and in my nicotine world, that where now that I'm an ex dipper, and I quit smoking in 2003 actually when my son was born. So I smoked for years and years and years, but looking back at it now, all I did was change delivery methods. I used to smoke and dip, and then I quit smoking and I just dipped more. It wasn't, I never quit anything. I didn't never quit the drug until 607 days ago. But
exactly, and that's where the patch thing is. Honestly, it's a joke.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, you know what? If it works for you guys out there,
more power
perfect.
To them. Yep.
But it just simply did not work for me because I knew I was an addict.
Yep. And as I told
full bore.
I actually had a conversation with a guy, one of my buddies, because now that I have some quit behind me, the people in my 12-step circles who still use nicotine will come to me and ask me occasionally, "Hey man, I'm thinking about stopping smoking. How'd you do it?" One of the bad things is that when I share, how I actually did it for 119 days is not how I'm doing it today. The fundamentals are the same, but so I have we'll get into that a little bit later, because I would send them to I would actually really, Jim, I would like to be able to send them to this website and say, here, these guys will help you. But there's something in me I can't, that's not something I can do today. I do share it with them, and I do tell them how I did it. And I tell them what that is. But that was actually primarily a dipping site too. So like these guys are smoking. But back to my original story, he was talking about patches and gum and lozenges and all that. And it come down to going, I ask him this question, were you ever able to moderate your drug and alcohol use? Whichever one or both. For this guy here was mostly alcohol guy. It's rare nowadays that we run into pure alcoholics. It seems like everybody does some of both. But this guy's a drinker. He never did do drugs. And I said, were you ever able to moderate your alcohol use? And he said, nope, I never was. I said, what makes you think you're going to be able to moderate your nicotine use?
Yeah, good question. Yeah.
Because I'm gonna circle back. It's like the same thing. After some years of quitting, you can share on that is that once you picked it up again, we're back off into the races and using again. So this guy wants to know that. But most of the time, people, they come so far. I have a 0 batting percentage on people that's one. Well, I shouldn't say that. Our buddy Quentin is still quit. He's had his struggles and whatnot, but he's up over 200 days now.
Yes,
he's
he
moving
is.
along pretty well.
Good job, Q.
So he's actually one person who actually has some nicotine quitting success behind him. Now, I have another friend who did it completely at the same time. Me and him quit about the same time, but he did it on his own. I had to give him some props. My buddy Shane, his story is on here too. He just sat down to dip, and he was like me, man. When we had a dip in our lip, if it was at all possible, we had one. And he's right with me too. So he's someplace in the neighborhood, but he doesn't use anything. He's just a dude who's able to just set it down, man.
Yeah, and now, in all fairness, though, both of those individuals had a support system.
Yeah, they do, no doubt.
And
absolutely.
Q ought to know that if he even thinks about touching a cigarette again, he's gonna catch hell from you.
Yep.
I'm gonna punt him right in the nuggets, and he doesn't want to go through that again.
No, he don't. That's for sure. He does not want to do that.
And so hat tip to you, Q. I want to make sure that your name gets out there too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So
I was going to say,
and then when we come back, I thought I was going to say I had no success in anybody, and it's not my success, but to people who come to me asking me how did I do it, very few of them actually follow up on it, and that just goes to the testament of what the nicotine, how deep the hooks are. The guy wants to stop, right? And he comes and he asks a guy how to do it. And when a guy gives him, and what I do is I'll offer him the accountability that you and I and Billy and our friends and stuff can provide him and say, we will help you do this. And here's how we'll do it, but, then I get cricket. Okay, man, well, let me give it some thought. And,
yeah, there you go. I've heard that one.
And then I don't hear from him again. But that, like I said, that's a testament to what that nicotine is. No joke, man. When I came into quitting, I thought I'd quit some stuff that was harder. And it didn't take me long to change my mind that I'm not so sure that nicotine may not have been the hardest thing to quit.
I think everybody discounts it because of still remains socially acceptable.
Yeah.
So
at some level, less so today, but it is still.
Exactly. People still do it.
Yep.
A lot of folks will turn their nose up to them. How can you smoke outside? What do you mean outside?
Yeah.
What, the trees are going to get a secondhand buzz for my cigarette smoke? What are you talking about?
Yeah. In Indiana, the signs all say you got to be 8 foot away from the door to smoke. 8 foot.
Oh, I know.
I want to carry around a tape measure.
Uncle Sam started putting up those, and it was 25 feet.
Oh, yeah.
From the nearest point of entry. I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm going to walk in, it's going to be on my clothes. So you're going to smell it whether you like it or not.
Yep, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
I was going to circle back too on another thing, and I hope we're not bouncing around too much. This is just more of a conversation about quitting nicotine, and I also want to get your story worked in here, so I don't want to abandon it completely. But again, this is going to be what it ends up being, and I'm not worried about I don't have a script, so I'm certainly not worried about leaving the script. But when my brother was in the military, he's 30 months younger than me. So and you and I are the same age, almost right on top of each other within a year. And so when he came into the military, the smoking would be frowned upon him. When he went to boot camp, I'm pretty sure they did not allow him to smoke in boot camp. It was starting to be something that they were frowning upon. So what they did is they snuck dips, and they weren't really supposed to be doing that either. But you can sneak a dip. It's damn tough to sneak a cigarette in boot camp. Apparently, I had no personal experience. But so he started doing that, and because of like I said, the smoking was unacceptable. But it appeared to me, at least from where I looked at, was that the dipping was not so frowned upon.
Yeah, and you know what? You're on to something there, too. Because when I was at Ranger School, you couldn't smoke there. And this was hard, mind you, to be told you can't do your addiction. And then, oh, by the way, we're going to stick you in a scenario where you can't get it. I literally can't go out. You don't have the freedom to go buy it. So, yeah, it pushed me into, I always had to the limit, because they also limited how much you could have through the duration of that school. And I'll tell you what, Dan, that was 91 days of hell.
Yeah.
That school is some tough stuff. And it's not It's not what you're doing. It's basically the whole thing is designed to find your strengths and your weaknesses,
Right.
and determine how far you can go under the most adverse adverse circumstances. Well, for me, it was part of it was basically knowing if I had enough at the time. Again, it was school because it was early on, and what was that? Red Man Golden Blend. That was Red Man, wasn't it? The Golden Blend.
Yeah, I never did chew a lot.
Yeah, me neither. It was only for Ranger School because I was allowed to have, if I did chew and dip, I would have twice as much.
Ah.
Right? Instead of, oh, I'm only going to have school, so that's,
So that's another addict type of deal there, is that I'm going to like double up on my substances so that I can make sure to have enough of it. It's like a doctor shopping kind of thing for a pillhead.
Exactly. By God, I got to make sure this might be a little different than this one. A different kind of buzz, a little different kind of, I might have to do more of this, but I'm still going to get my fix, by God.
Right. Yep. One way or another.
And I can't remember where I was going with that. There was
the Golden Blend and the Ranger School, and something about the, we were on the line of being, whether if it was okay or not as far as
right. Yeah, and how dipping and chewing is more acceptable in the military, especially in field circumstances. That's where I was going, because when you're out in the field, you can smell cigarette smoke. Well, I'll exaggerate, but a mile away you can smell somebody smoking a cigarette. And at nighttime, you can see the cherry on a cigarette for 2 miles.
Yeah, I was going to ask that question too, no doubt.
Yeah, so if you're dipping or chewing, you've got the noise and light discipline, and that's why they kind of, I guess that's probably part of the institutional reason for the acceptance of the chewing tobacco aspect.
Yeah, it can be camouflaged a little easier.
Yeah. And which just made it easier. And, I'm getting the 2 thumbs up of approval. I've got my addiction, but by God, at least I'm not going to get shot at night.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we're not going to, that's the, no matter what the consequences. So like in this case, the potential consequence is somebody's going to shoot your ass. Right.
Oh, and yeah.
I'm not going to stop using. I'm just going to change the way I'm using.
Now here's, I'll take. It's funny, but there's a serious story here too, that I want to share because it shows the level of where addiction will take you, even if it is tobacco. And I believe wholeheartedly that people just really don't appreciate how bad this addiction is.
Yeah, I agree.
But when I was in Iraq, there was a building that had, I was a communication guy, as you remember. I was all about phones and radios and this and that. And I had a crew of some of the best communication soldiers the Army's ever seen. And I mean that. And if for whatever reason they would hear this, I appreciate everything they did. But that also made me want to go out and I didn't want to be a desk guy, or some people call a fobbit. You stay on the base and you don't venture out from the confines of the office. That was not me. So there's a building that had all the phone switches in it, or the punch down boards. And it was a more secure building. It had basically an Air Force, basically like the Air Force military intelligence guys, the counter intel guys. But I had to get in there to troubleshoot phones. And this one guy, every time I went there, he was outside. He was smoking a cigar. And believe it or not, yes, you're getting your nicotine fix with cigars. That's why people do it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Because people say, well, I don't inhale.
Yeah, right.
I didn't inhale dip either. Or not purposely.
Well, that's another story. That's the depths of depravity with dipping. Because, yes, I've gutted the...
Yeah, swallowing would be the... God. Yeah,
Can't
swallowing
believe I
would
used
be,
to do that shit.
Yeah, that would be the equivalent of not inhaling on a dip, wouldn't it? Be
Yeah,
swallowing.
exactly.
Although you're still getting the drug big time, no matter if you swallow. But I just can't imagine. I guess you get. I don't know. I wonder, and I don't know.
You get an ulcer guaranteed.
Yeah, right.
So I would go whenever I'd show up. The guy would be out there with a cigar. I'd have a cigarette with him, and then I'd go inside, do my work. And by God, I earned another cigarette when I came out, right? You know, whether it took me 15 minutes or 45, you know, I earned another cigarette, and he would be out there again. It's like we were on this schedule. And this one time, I left. It was probably around 4 in the afternoon, and I'm headed back to the office, and we get hit by a mortar attack. And it was routine. We got hit every day, multiple times a day. And I remember the next day, not thinking anything of it. It did impact, did detonate, and I didn't hear anything else. So the next day, I go back to that same building, and come to find out, Mr. Cigar Guy was outside when that mortar hit, and splattered him all over the wall.
Oh, really?
And
wow, that's a risk of using that you weren't prepared for.
And that's the whole point of the story, not the shock effect, but yeah, maybe to shock some people into thinking the lengths that we will go to get our fix. And you know, if it means standing out during a mortar attack, we would do it. And this guy did it, and he paid the ultimate price.
Yeah. Whew.
And I'll tell you, I've got even more stories. You know, the same deployment. A rocket attack goes off, hits in the middle of the base where we stored all the confiscated munitions, right?
Yep.
Rockets and bombs of all sizes, and a rocket comes over the berm, doesn't hit anything significant, but starts a brush fire, and it burns over and goes right to what's called an AHA, ammunition holding area, and sets off all these munitions.
I never heard that before.
Oh, it was AHA. Yeah, AHA. Well, in this case, it was definitely an AHA, because when that shit started going off,
yeah,
it was incredible. And I mean, anywhere from bullets to 500-pound bombs were cooking off. And what did I do? Once the alarm goes off, I go out. I link up with my commo chief. We make sure all our guys are accounted for. They're in the bunkers. And I call him the Bear. And this guy looked like Mike Singletary.
Oh, yeah?
I mean, he had these intense eyes. And he was big like Mike Singletary. And instead, me and the Bear are out there smoking a cigarette, standing up in the open as all these munitions are going off. Until when the 500-pounders started going off, I was looking around the corner with a cigarette in my mouth, looking around the corner, from behind this bunker. The sucker goes off, and I basically get sandblasted. And it was the cleanest shave I've ever had. I felt my skin. Once all the sand was off, it was like I had just put a razor to my face. And I was like, you know what? I'm starting to think this isn't too smart, Bear. Maybe we ought to finish up this cigarette and go into the bunker with everybody else.
Yeah.
But we're going to finish it. We're going to finish our cigarette and then go inside as all these munitions are going off. And then the shrapnel starts flying. And we lived in what are called CHUs, containerized housing units.
There's all these acronyms.
We're made of acronyms.
Yeah, CHUs.
And so they're made of metal with metal roofs. And so we started hearing the small shrapnel hitting the roofs. Yeah, it sounded like a hailstorm, right?
Yeah.
And then the big chunks started flying.
Man.
And I was like, Bear, fuck this. Let's go. Then we went in the bunker, and that's when a whole line of these 500 started cooking. And I thought about it, going, you know what? All that so I can have a cigarette?
Yeah.
What if one of those chunks hit me on the head? Or anywhere else, for that matter.
Yeah.
I'd be a big bloody mess. And for what? Just so I could have a cigarette?
So I could have some nicotine.
Pretty stupid, man. And I mean, we all have stories about the stupidity of this habit. But the just the amount or the lengths that we'll go just to satisfy it. Driving in the middle of the night, walking in the middle of the night. Oh, by God, it's a blizzard. And I have stood in 4 feet of snow so I could have my cigarette outside.
Yeah, that's crazy, man.
Yeah. What the hell?
Yeah, and so by this time, we're not doing it to look cool anymore, probably, although there probably is a little bit of like that bravado stuff there, huh? Kind of like the scenes in Apocalypse Now where he's standing smoking a cigarette in the face of the danger.
Oh, and that's what it felt like. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'm Colonel Kilgore, by God. I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
Right, yeah.
I love the smell of my Marlboro Lights in the morning.
Yeah. That is...
And then I'd finish off the cigarette and go in the office, and bammo, right then I'd put a dip in.
Yeah, as soon as you get inside.
Oh, yeah, and this building up to the next step obviously is what happened, but as my addiction increased and my hunger for nicotine increased, at my heyday in Iraq, I was smoking an entire pack of cigarettes and dipping a half a can of Copenhagen per day, or an entire can of Copenhagen and a half a pack of cigarettes.
Wow.
I was buzzing the whole deployment. And that's 400 days of, mega addiction. And for me, it was stress relief. I don't know why somebody thinks that getting a buzz from nicotine is relieving stress. I don't understand why we thought it was relaxing, but we fooled ourselves into believing that.
Yep. Another just a cornerstone of typical addiction of us. The lie we tell ourselves to keep on using.
Full of it.
Yep.
Full of lies, by God.
Yep. We do it with all kinds of substances. So the nicotine
and
my favorite
lie was I can quit anytime I want to.
Yeah.
Boy, if you heard that one before.
Yeah. Yep. Stereotypical. It's I actually was thinking about doing like a talk, because I've been coming up with for these podcasts and stuff. But that and the coming out of the yoga teacher training thing was all the big thing was the lies or the stories we're telling ourselves in order to continue to stay stuck or to continue behaviors that are not good for us. And that's a big one that I can quit anytime I want to. Another one, just one more.
Oh my God! Yeah.
I'm not hurting anybody but myself. You see, I can actually run down. I've written down quite a few of them, but all these little one-liner lies that, and when we get in around here, and you kind of, we just call them newcomers. When the newbies come around and they will toss those lies out. And you're like, yeah, I just, I because I got it, I can spot it. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not buying your little, I'm not hurting anybody but myself thing.
Yeah, the equivalent of the passing the vet review.
Yeah.
The vets will tell you otherwise, and I don't mean military vets. I mean the recovery vets.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and you go, yeah. So let me talk to your mom about that not hurting anybody but yourself thing. Yeah.
Or didn't you tell me once that your daughter, your 3-year-old baby, picked up your spit bottle?
Right. Yep.
And asked, and held it up, thinking, "Hey, this is something to drink." Boy, don't you feel like a jackass now?
Right, yeah, and then when those kids you pry into those things, one of my worst memories is when I would leave my home to go get more alcohol with my kids in bed when they were babies. I would drive and specifically it's one thing when I would go down the street to my liquor store, but in this goofy state, up until now, we've changed the laws now, but for so long in Indiana, you could not buy alcohol on Sundays.
Yeah, so Illinois was the same way, or at least until noon.
Right. Yeah, and that's same thing. In Kentucky that you can't do it. I think it's 1:00, but you couldn't at all on Sunday. So if it was Sunday night and I needed some more, I was driving from my house in New Albany to Louisville in the evening into a bad neighborhood because that was the closest liquor store to getting it. So I would drive into a shitty part of town in order to get my alcohol and come back and leave my kids there. So something could easily have happened to me over there. that would have made me not be able to return. Not to mention I'm drinking and driving. I'm drunk going and getting it, But those things that, I'm not hurting anybody but myself. Yeah.
Exactly. And you know what? I look back and I regret, because I would take, when the girls were still living in my house, I got daughters, the twins. And when they were still living in the house, I would take long drives. Hey, Daddy's got to go to the store.
Yeah.
And, I didn't leave them unattended. Their mom was here, the boys were here, and I'd take a long drive just to go nowhere in particular.
Yep.
But so I could dip.
Yep.
Without them seeing me. Doing a ninja dipper thing.
Just so you could use.
Yeah. And every now I tried smoking or sneaking cigarettes, but my now ex-wife, she had a nose for that stuff. If I had a cigarette, she could smell it or taste it on me 96 hours after I had it.
Wow.
She was that good. And I still, because it's my addiction, I know how to work this. So I had all the lies, all the stories, and plus I thought I could take measures so she would not know. I always had scope in the truck.
Yep.
So I could rinse out the tobacco smell. I always had, those Listerine.
Those little strips.
Yeah, the strips. My God, those are awesome. But she could, the cigarette smoke, it would come out of my mouth, but it'd be what was in my lungs. I was never smart enough to realize that no matter what I did, the easiest thing to do would be to not do it.
Yep. But that actually is not an option when you're under the grips of the addiction.
Yeah, I was ultimately, and I used to pride myself of being a fairly smart person. But hindsight being 2020, when it came to addiction, I am really stupid, even though I thought I was smart about it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the same for everybody. You probably have heard that dozens, if not hundreds of times.
Yeah, we think we're outsmarting people, and then we get in the face of somebody who is down the path of like recovery, whatever that happens to be, and you start like trying to toss off your stuff to them or our wives and loved ones, and we're trying to pull the wool over their eyes, and ultimately it's like almost sad how dumb we are, but we think we're so smart. We think we're pulling the wool over these other, oh man, there it goes again. We think we're pulling the wool over these people's eyes, and it's, I wonder how I can make that stop without muting everything. I totally lost my train of thought with that ding-a-ling. The deal is, though, and it's just like the rest of this, these substances hijack our operating system, and we are smarter than that. We actually are. But it's planted a seed like a computer virus in us. The computer is not acting up on purpose. It would not. If it was clean and didn't have its virus, it wouldn't be doing the silly shit that it's doing. And the same thing with us. If those hooks of addiction, if that disease, and it is a disease thing in the fact of that it is monkeyed with your thinking apparatus. It is like a mental condition that makes you think outside, that you can kiss your wife after smoking a cigarette and she won't know it.
Yep.
That's that switch that's flipped, that flips it, that it has flipped in your brain, making you think that that's going to be okay, and you're going to be able to, that this time. The other, I know it didn't work the other 150 times, but this time today, I think I can pull it off.
Yeah, and I'm just going to keep on saying, oh, you're just making this up. Why are you coming down on me? And yes, hurting your loved ones.
Yeah.
Calling them a liar when in actuality, you're telling all the lies.
Yeah.
I mean, probably for the 100 times that I'd say, make up some story about not smoking. Like I walked through a crowd of people that were smoking and it just stuck to my clothes. I use that, God knows, probably 100 times, if not more, but only 99 times, or only one out of that 100 was it probably true.
Right.
And the rest of the time, I was just lying. And I know that my ex did not like it. I know she didn't. She didn't hide that fact from me, that she was very disappointed whenever I would go back to it. And I quit. I go back. I quit. I go back. I would go back, not tell anybody, hide it pretty good for a while, and then get busted. And just is such a vicious cycle.
Yep, the lying, what we do in that department, is another obvious, piece of this addiction is the fact that we're lying about it. Anything I got to cover up, anything I got to hide like that is obviously something that's not in alignment with what I need to be doing.
Yeah, so
let's talk about, let's get into the quitting part of things. And and how you maybe I really don't even know where to start on it. If you want to talk about how when the first time you started feeling it was a problem, or the first time you attempted to start quitting, or
well, I'll say after a 21-year career of tobacco use, everybody that's tried to quit something, you've quit dozens of times, right? Or attempted to quit dozens of times. Some don't even last 12 hours. Some might last 12 months. But the first time I decided I was going to get really serious. Really. I'm saying that again with quotation marks.
Yeah, right.
Really serious this time.
I'm going to do it this time.
Yeah. And that's when I went to that website that we're talking about, or have mentioned. And that came as a recommendation from my brother, who, by the way, I introduced him to Copenhagen, got him addicted, and as a dare, basically. Yeah, I mean, talk about going back briefly to the stupid stuff we do to hurt others. I dared him. I said, quit making fun of it. Now, put your money where your lip is. And then you tell me whether this is a stupid habit or not. And he got addicted. And he dipped solid for 10 years. But anyway, he told me about this website that, talk about brutal, and we'll talk about that later. But it worked for a while. And I definitely made my 100 days.
Which, just for those out there, that's and there is some addiction science that goes with that 90 to 100 days kind of window is a real big breakthrough of breaking through the other side of the addiction. So that particular thing in this nicotine world, I say, and I think what I say to my friends when I talk about it is that we celebrate zeros. So like even 10, 20, 30 days, we celebrate those. And then the 100 day is where the first big breakthrough in my 12-step stuff, the first breakthrough is a year. But then so you said you made it to the 100 days. That's why that's a significant. I just want the listeners to understand why that's a significant number in our world there.
Yeah, and it doesn't change anything. You're still an addict. A lot of the newer quitters think, well, 100 days, I'm safe, and I can be around the dippers and smokers again. I can maybe do one.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the just one is just one, folks. But I went that time. I was still in the Army. I had changed location, changed units. Actually, I went from an active component unit to a reserve component unit, and I went to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, though I lived in Texas. And we went to an exercise where we were training units to go fight the war, and I just figured I would just buy one can of Copenhagen to get me through this exercise, and then I'm back to quitting.
Yep.
Well, that didn't work. The one can turned into one can a day, which turned into, and every time you go back, I don't know, I can't speak for other addictions, but I know with when you quit for a time with nicotine and then you return, you come back with a vengeance. You find yourself dipping or smoking almost twice as hard as you did before. Maybe not twice as much, but I went back on it and rode that roller coaster again until Uh, got busted out. The wife walked in. I used to sit in my office at the house with the door closed, and they'd say, I'm recording music in here, so don't open the door. Well, she opened the door. I had a big old fat wad of Copenhagen in my lip. And she goes, I thought you quit.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Red-handed again.
Yeah, again. And just because. But I was serious about quitting. But I think I was quitting for the wrong reason. So then I tried it again. Same site. Caught living hell for that. Coming back. Oh, gee, the colonel's back again. Yada, yada, yada.
Right, because in we call them cavers, and that's one of the things that kind of went against my grain from the beginning, is because like in my recovery world, we use a thing that says keep coming back. We invite you to keep coming back, and they keep on making it easy for me to come back. And man, I am really thankful that they made it easy, because it was hard to come back. And in this world, they actually don't make it easy to come back. They make it hard to come back, man. You don't want to go back in there and get all that ribbon and catch all that shit for being a caver. Frankly, they can be just flat brutal, and we've watched people come back and they will go back out, they will leave the tool that they're trying to use to save their lives because they can't handle that beat down that happens in there. And I see both sides of it in a way. I understand, like in one little way, how that is, that's the deterrent, right? To don't leave because we're going to beat your ass when you come back. But
I'm sorry, go ahead.
It just goes against my core principles as far as that. That's something that I never liked from the beginning. I didn't take part in it when it was going on in there. It was just something that I did not do, man. I would text the guys that were getting beat up on the side and say, hey, man, I'm your buddy, man. And if you fuck them, don't listen to them.
Well, I kind of did the same thing. But I would make sure that they were coming back with a full understanding of the intent of the ass chewings and the ribbing, not how it happens now, but how it used to happen. The intent was that they want you to take it serious and to take inventory. There's good recovery.
Yep.
Where take inventory, yep. And are you here for the right reason? Are you serious this time? And that's how my first return was. And I mean, all the vets that remembered me were coming out of the woodwork. They were happy to see me come back, kind of like it would be in one of your AA groups, I'm sure. Okay, well, what do you need this time? What can we do to make this time work for you? Or what do you need to do to make it work? And I will support you. But that one, it just didn't take, because again, I think I was quitting for the wrong reason. I think I was quitting because people wanted me to. I didn't want to. I wanted to do it for, insert name, my brother, my wife, do it for the health of my children. I'm not saying that's a wrong reason, but unless you buy into it, then it's just not going to stick.
Yep. Yeah. And that's the same thing with all addictions, all these things and behaviors. If you're not actually, and there's a fine line in between that doing it for myself thing, and you can read it, and like you said, you can hear that going back in hindsight, seeing that you weren't doing it for yourself. At the time, if I could step back into your face and be standing beside you, probably back then I would ask you, are you doing this for yourself? You would say yes.
Oh, I know. And I did.
Yeah. So it's a weird dynamic about how that works, about that being, doing it for yourself or not.
And I think at that point, instead of lying to everybody else, I was lying to myself. The biggest lie. And trying to convince myself that I was doing this for the right reason. So it's got to work now.
Right. Yeah.
But I wasn't ready to tackle the addiction. I was ready to get people off my back about fucking cigarettes and Copenhagen. Yeah. That's basically all I was doing, is I wanted everybody off my back.
Right. So then, so that's really, it was and that is a big difference, in that you really didn't want to quit, right?
No,
There was
I think
nothing.
deep down inside I didn't want to.
Some people have health scares, and some people have, where they're just starting to feel bad. Maybe it's not a true health scare like a doctor, like actually have something happen, like you have a heart attack, and doctor says you got to quit smoking or you're going to die. But sometimes you just feel bad, because it is, I would dip so hard that my mouth would be sore, right?
Oh, yeah.
And my inside of my gums just hurt, and I'd wake up in the morning with that kind of in my mouth, and the best I could do, would be roll over, grab the can, stick another one in it, and just like suffer through it because I needed
power
some more.
through it. There you go.
and so that kind of thing would lead you to go, man, I got to stop. But there also is the other thing of just these other people. I can't imagine. I never had a significant other was on my ass to stop any of the stuff I was doing because I was hiding my alcohol and drug abuse from her to an extent that she didn't know how bad it was until I actually admitted it to her. But she never did never was I just couldn't get over girls who would like kiss you when you were dipping, and mine would. It's like,
hey, that's the 2 thumbs up right there. That's
right.
a keeper.
Yeah, you're right. And it wouldn't be like we're getting hard and heavy with it, but I'd toss the dip if we're going to actually get down to doing some kissing. But never have any issue with it. But now the gal I'm with now, Robin, she said she said, had I been dipping when I met her, it would have been like it'd have been a deal breaker right off the get go. She
Awesome.
would have been like, no way. She said I wouldn't have been interested in the least little bit.
But if you were still dipping, you would have been ninja dipping.
Yeah, probably.
And she would have known, and she would have
down
had
the
one
path.
of those. Yeah, and she would have bumped into you when you least expected it, and you would have had a fatty in. And how long have you been doing that? Oh, for 20 years now.
Yeah, all my life.
Yeah, and I didn't know you had a problem with it. Yeah. Oh God. Yeah.
So back to the trying to quit, and it wasn't for yourself, and you just kept on because now had you had that because at one point you had some real significant time, right? But this has not happened yet.
No, actually, that second time, the one that we were just left off at was probably the longest that I went. But like you've mentioned multiple times in your podcast, the math just doesn't add up.
Right.
I remember the quit days. I think, I'm not sure, but I think to keep people off my ass, when I drifted away from the site, I just kept telling them a quit day number.
Yeah. Nothing to stop you from just keep on posting a number or keep on texting a number,
Yeah, all these people, I mean,
besides your own conscience, of going, oh, golly, I don't like to, nobody likes to lie. I think that's a core thing. We don't really like to do that. So when you're putting out that false number every day, you're like, fuck.
Yeah, I felt miserable, and I don't know how long I did that or if I was intentionally doing it with the deception in mind. If we're just
kind of like a little hiatus, I'm just going to dip for a little bit and just pick right back up, and what's the sense in skipping these numbers, you'll just go 76, 77, 78, whatever that, and then later on it'll be 90 and I'll be quit again or whatever,
I am certain sailing. I thought that. I thought I was on a dipping vacation or something. I know I was thinking that.
Yeah, that's a trip.
And as soon as I retire, once I retire from the Army, I'll be away from this. So then I don't have to worry about it. Well, then I become a lineman for the phone company.
Yep.
And by God, what's cooler than standing up in a bucket in bad weather, fixing phone lines, than to have a cigarette in your mouth while you're doing it? Oh my God. So it's not just, I'll have to wait until I'm no longer a lineman before I quit.
Right. Yeah. There's always some threshold down the way. That's a typical thing for us too. When I'm
waiting for the final party, right?
I get married, I'll stop. I'll have a baby, I'll stop. We'll buy a house, I'll stop. I retire, I'll stop. You got all these lines that are out there that when I get to that, I will quit.
I think I read.
We just keep pushing the line further down the road.
Yeah, I think I read in some AA literature once. Or talked to a friend of mine, that it seemed like they were always just waiting for the final party, the last big party, and then they were going to be done. That's how they kind of described their drinking. Well, it's not this week, but by God, when that big party comes next week, I'll be done. Or I can't remember. I'm probably not doing it justice, but it was just a way of kicking the can down the down the road.
Yep.
Fast forwarding a couple years, and it kind of came out of nowhere. But the build up to 8 October 2017, the build up was my lip was hurting more. My chest was always congested because, again, I was dipping and smoking like a fiend.
Yep.
If I was inside, I was dipping. If I was outside, I was smoking. Mm-hmm. In a construction environment, that's just what I would do because I could get away with it. In the Army, it was almost like, okay, well, that's understandable. But believe it or not, of all the linemen that I worked around, I was one of the few that smoked. A lot of them dipped, but I was one of the few that smoked. So I just kept doing that. And so I was coughing a lot, and I basically felt just like shit. And not go to the hospital level, but I started thinking, well, if I keep this up, I will be in the hospital.
Yep.
And we know how this ends. Not hat tip, but looking up to heaven, mom and dad sitting up there going, boy, you need to get your act together because look at where we're at. That too can be you. And I think you mentioned in your story how you constantly felt this dread about your own parents. It's just maybe not today, maybe tomorrow, waiting for the other shoe to drop, right? And when my mom got diagnosed with lung cancer, that's how it was. And I had felt like I'd grown up expecting that day. Even though it didn't happen until 2001. It just felt like I was not looking forward to it, but dreading that day all along. So here I am in 2017 going, all right, well, you got to take action now. If you don't, this is what's going to happen to you. And it was a Sunday morning, I remember. And I woke up. I had like a partial can of Copenhagen left. And I called my brother and asked him what he would think the community on that website, how they would feel about me coming back for my third time. Which, that's 2 caves. I'm not the only one to have ever done that.
Nope.
But that was with the old mindset.
Yeah.
The totally different character, different characters, different personality. The site was different then. Back then. So in 2017, he's like, yes, by all means, you need to come back because I know. And he listed off a handful of names that I remember from my previous attempts. And I was like, are you sure they would welcome me back? He goes, well, you're going to catch some crap because remember, you are a caver.
Yeah.
But they want nothing more than to see you quit and healthy. And I believed it. And I did some research. Basically, and the preparations that every quitter has to do. What is your plan? Get rid of all the spit bottles, all the dipping and smoking paraphernalia. Get rid of all the empties. All that, and make sure you have your substitute. For me, it's cough drops. I have a very unnatural love of cough drops now. And it does the oral fixation. It has that, the Hall's mentholyptus, the throat punch, and it's like smoking a menthol. Yeah. So I had all that stuff lined up. I was ready, and As soon as I dumped the last of my Copenhagen in the toilet, flushed, and made sure I crushed and threw the can away, that way it wasn't in sight, I went logged back onto that site at about 6 p.m. on the 8th of October 2017 and have not looked back. So that is what happened. I mean, yes, there was a health scare of sorts, not one of those earth-shattering things, and it wasn't like a rock bottom moment that you would have with other addictions, though I guess you kind of could say it is. I either quit or I die.
Yeah, it's getting to you. Did anybody tell you, or you were just feeling that?
I was just feeling it. This was all a moment of clarity for me, self-reflection, and it just hit me. And I made that call to my brother at 11 o'clock that morning.
Yeah.
I woke up and said, you know what? Why the hell am I still doing this?
Yep.
I feel miserable. I don't enjoy the cigarettes anymore because as soon as I take one hit, I'm coughing. The Copenhagen, I feel like a pressure in my head. It just feels like I'm all weirded out on this substance, and I just don't feel normal anymore, and my lip hurts.
Yeah. Well, so we stay kind of parallel. So that landed you on the 8th of October into their posting a day one, is what we say, right?
Yep, that was
so that's
my
what
day
you
one.
know what happens with that is. I like that term actually too, because I kind of like it. We say in the 12-step circles we have a 24-hour chip kind of thing, but I think that day one is like more. Well, it's got a better. I don't know. It's got more thump to me. So I was sitting with it, and I've been dipping and doing that, and I'd had I don't know however many, a couple years of sobriety now or whatever it was. Again, a timeline is not important. I try not to get, anytime any of my guests get hung up on a timeline, I try to let's just keep moving, man. It doesn't matter. So I'll have to listen to my own preaching there. And I'm sitting across, I actually remember I was at a men's recovery place in the town next door to us, and I'm sitting across there sponsoring a guy, and I'm working steps with him, and I'm talking to him, and I'm preaching to him, so to speak. Of the thought of improving the quality of my life in recovery and what that's doing for me and how much better my life is and all this. And I'm talking to him about setting down things that don't work for you and things that are bad for you and making room for good things to come in because you've done that. It's a vacuum that can be filled and must be filled actually. And I'm sitting there and I look down and as I pause, I spit in my spit bottle. And I go back to talking to him, and it just hits me like a ton of bricks. I'm like, I just felt like such a hypocrite just right at that very moment, man. And like my higher power just slapped me and said, did you hear what you just said and what you just did, and that kind of stuff ran through my mind of, do as I say, not as I do. Actions are far, I can't hear a word you're saying because your actions are so loud. All those kind of things. And so I went on with my deal that day, and I really didn't let that guy know because what my thoughts were, and I moved on down. But I knew I needed to stop, and I tried to. I just said, and I remember I was sitting on my bed in my bedroom, and I took my last dip that night in an empty can, and I tossed it. And I'm really good at shooting baskets with things, whether it's a paper wad or what it is, into the garbage can. And boom, I threw that can of dip in the garbage, and went to sleep. And I woke up the next morning, man, and I wanted to do what I want to do. I didn't know, but I didn't have any.
You didn't lick the can, did you?
Nope. And I went and I took my shower and I took off down the road and I made it past 3 convenience stores and pulled in the 4th.
Oh, yeah. I was just going to say, that's too much temptation.
Yeah. And I was heading to work and by work, by my employer, there's no real close gas stations. There's nothing close. You got to drive a little ways to get to something. But
there's no far is too far.
No far. I would do it, but I thought, well, shoot, man, that doesn't make any sense to get up and leave work. I'm just going to do it in a little bit. Might as well stop now. So I did, and I walked up to buy, and I stood in line, and I walked up to buy my can, and there was something gnawing in my gut that I, didn't want to do it, but I felt like I had to. Like I had to get a can of dip. There's just what I needed to do. I just had to. Yeah, and I walked up and they had those there was those lozenges on the counter for quitting.
Oh
And
no.
and I bought those. I changed my mind right then, and I bought a can of them. And I walked out the door, and I tossed some in my mouth, and I felt pretty good about myself. And the monsters quieted down a little bit because I got my hit of nicotine right.
Yep.
It wasn't a dip, so I get to work and I do those for like 2 or 3 days. And what I found out is the same kind of thing as on the other deal. I thought that a can of them was going to be enough, and it's like as soon as I got to work, I realized, yeah, man, you should have bought more of these. Because I'm eating them like Tic Tacs now, man.
I used to call them Nico candies.
Yeah, and didn't think a thing about it. I actually was still backpatting myself, man. And so I'm gonna go. So 3 days later, I'm sitting at work and I'm eating these things, and my mouth is like sloughing off like I'd had too hot soup. Like I'd drank some soup. It was too hot and it burned the inside of my mouth. And I tell myself, I'm going, man, I've already got the cancer. It's too late. I quit too late. And I Googled, and I remember, and it was either, I don't remember if it was this way or the other way. I Googled sore mouth, quit dipping, or quit dipping, sore mouth. That combination, I just Googled those words, and up popped that site we're talking about. And I'm not going to worry about if I say it, but I don't really want to give them any undue publicity, so I'm not going to be too worried about it. But I'm going to dance around it a little bit. If it comes out, it comes out. But so here it pops up, and I start reading this stuff on there about quitting and accountability and the brotherhood stuff. And there was an answer on there that said what to expect when you quit. And in there was some stuff about the exact same thing I was experiencing, which relieved my concern that I had cancer and all that, And I went, well, look, it's perfectly normal. And man, another bell went off just like it did with the dude the other day when it said, look at what you're doing. A bell went off that said, Dan, you've done this before. This is almost like your 12-step recovery. This is doing it in community with people who've done it all with you. And people who are walked down the path ahead of you can share their experience with what's going on. And it just felt so natural, man. And I signed up and immediately got bashed because I was still using. And that was a little bit of a problem, because I was like, I thought I was coming in here like with my Superman cape on, I was going to fly in here and this is going to be work for me. And they said, yeah, you can't be doing that. And I was like, well, and somebody told me to go throw them in the dumpster. Don't put them in the garbage at my desk.
Yep.
And so I actually did. I went outside and I throwed them. Now I ain't above dumpster diving, I'll tell you too, man. Because
we've all dug through the garbage cans.
But it did raise the level of difficulty for me anyway, as far as going in a dumpster and getting more of them. And I tossed those lozenges in the big dumpster out back at work, and came back in and posted on there that I had done so. And that's how I got my start there. I had no idea what I was walking into that day.
And you know what? While we're not bringing up the name of the site, I will tell you that the preset, the platform, the essence of that site is spot on.
Absolutely,
it works.
Man. It's the personalities.
Yes, it was the personalities that soured it.
My sponsor brought up as I talked to him about this, because I want to hit it real quick since we did, is that in 12-step recovery we have these things called the traditions, and one of them talks about the fact that it's principles before personalities, and because that one of the things he brought up to me, and I'll lay it at his feet. I agree with it, but I'm gonna lay it at his feet anyway. Is because they didn't really have these traditions and these ways of operating in that way. They kind of did it by the chin of the hair of their chin, that the personalities actually did come in front of the principles, and that's what the problem is. There is that the personalities are in the way.
Yeah, and nobody could put them in check.
Yeah,
and that was the unfortunate part. And that I was their biggest advocate when you and Billy showed up, and we became that tight little group. I mean, think of a single time where I bashed the site. I didn't. I said this site works. It's just this person. And I still believe it to this day that, well, my original experience with the site was, I wish I'd been just as serious then. God knows how many, I'd have commas out the ass on this one.
Yep.
That's just the comma thing is that for everybody listening, that's thousands of days.
More zeros, yeah. So the first
zeros.
comma is when you cross over from 999 to 1,000. That's why the comma.
I'd be doing
1,000.
Awesome.
Yep.
But you're right. The personalities took over, soured the entire experience. I'm sure it's successful for many, many people. Just don't be the colonel. And don't be dog, and don't be probe,
Yep.
and you'll be fine.
Yep. Come in there, bow down. Don't. Yeah. No, the fact of the matter is we got fairly strong personalities, and they were contrary. Were actually the personalities that they would like to have.
You would have thought, because we had a following. We had people that wanted to learn about our quit.
Yeah.
I remember calling you Q Dog the Zen Master, because you would pull out this treasure trove of recovery precepts and sayings, and you were educating people, and they just the youngins took to it and fed off of it, and some of the vets did, and other vets went, "Who does this guy think he is?"
Yep.
And here I'm saying, this is Dog. That's who he is, and he knows about all the other addictions, and he wants this one.
Yep.
He wants to quit this, and I'm going to help him, by God.
It was stepping into that really, I remember feeling very, I feel pretty sure of myself today. I'm a pretty confident fella. But when I stepped into there, man, there was some uneasiness, of it always felt like I was stepping into something I wasn't prepared for. I'm not really sure. It always felt like I was, and I think I think there's an air there that wants to keep you off balance a little bit. And maybe that's good for you. Maybe that's more of this kind of stuff, because there are, I will tell you that, people will say something about, and I also try not to like say AA. I try to say I'm in 12-step recovery. Most people know what I'm talking about when I say that. It's just a little bit of an anonymity thing. I'm not too concerned, man, because once I started this podcast, my anonymity blown out the fucking window anyway, right? But I try to balance that a little bit. So, they were telling me that, I heard some people say, if you would Google AA, and I did for a while because I wanted to find some ammunition about why it wouldn't work, so that I could put that in my tool belt and say that won't work for me. The disease was wanting to not get sober, so it was trying to find ways to do that. Is that that there's some brainwashing going on, and the fact of the matter is that I needed some brainwashing. My brain was pretty dirty and it, fogged up from the chemicals.
You needed some kind of cleansing.
So there's some stuff behind that. That getting us to storm and form in our group, how they would roll grenades in our nest that would cause problems, and that made us actually grow closer to one another.
It did, that should have been a success.
And that is a good thing, but that's the problem with like rolling grenades in nests, is they don't always have the desired outcome. You can kill everybody at the same time, man.
Yeah, and that's where the personalities basically had the unintended consequence, or unintended. They didn't want us to get tighter.
Yeah, because I'm like I'm this all-in guy since coming to recovery. I take all my chips, man, and I push them to the middle of the table. So when we had this spreadsheet that you guys were doing, that you were needing help, there was these little pleas for wanting to help run that SSOA, whatever that accountability spreadsheet was. I raised my hand, man. I wanted in on that, because I learned, and I say this all the time in the podcast, I learned it. I saw Happy yesterday, and he's the one I stole it from, or that told me that he said, that I knew that I had to participate in my recovery. And I knew that the higher the level of participation I had in my quit, the higher the probability for my success would be. And when I saw opportunities to participate, I wanted in on that. And then you would like do it, and then you'd be called out for like being a controlling asshole. It's like, you
were right though. They wanted to keep us off guard, but the part of the reason for that, not justifying what they did, they took it too far, but part of the reason is we're all going through a fog.
Yep. Which the fog is that nicotine haze that as that stuff starts lifting, man, you get really foggy, man. It is truly like having on some kind of foggy crystal fogged glasses. You
can't even tie your shoe without thinking about
right,
it. Going, now how do I do this again?
Yeah, you leave work, man, and can't remember how to get home. You forget where you parked your car.
Really stupid.
Leave the house without brushing your teeth.
You're a zombie.
It's like, whoa, man, I am doing real. That's where my attention first started getting that this wasn't no game, man. It's really toying, because it's not doing that stuff to you if it's not. The consequences of quitting were hard.
Exactly. And I think that's why they would occasionally, and I'm not talking about the directed stuff, the personal stuff, but that's why they would throw those grenades into the room occasionally, just to get our minds off of the suck.
Yeah.
Because the quitting sucks.
Yeah. There's some more terms. Yeah. The fog, the suck.
The funk.
Yeah.
There's the funk, which comes once the fog begins to clear, and then you realize that it really does suck. And that's when you drop into the funk, and you always, you got to watch out. And that's why they, another reason they want to combat the complacency.
Yeah.
I've got this. What the hell do I need this site for? What do I need accountability for? I've got this. I'm good. And it usually hits between the 20 and 30 days. And again, later on, and later on after that. But that's the first big challenge. If you can get to if you can make it to 20 or 30 and still be convinced that you're doing this for the right reason, and you've got buddies that are there to say, hang tough. And I remember a couple of your meltdowns, as you probably remember some of mine. But by God, it was hitting you really hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was able to put the science back into it. Say, dude, this is not, you do want to quit. I know you want to quit. I can see it. I can hear it. I see it in everything that you write. This is just a phase. Trust me, I've done this. And I think that's where even in newbies, once you and I had graduated into further along in the process, that's where what me and Billy were doing for the youngins was actually beneficial, because we were sharing that same level of suck. Billy was being his usual crotchety self. Here I am. I've got, I'm the serial caver that's made good.
Yep.
And then you've got the Zen master of quit, Q-Dog right there, you. And we were a power to be reckoned with. And I'll tell you what, if it weren't for you guys, and this is about the brotherhood and accountability, if it weren't for you guys, I would not be at 617. Yeah. I probably would have had another day 1 or 2 or 3 since then, because it just, you guys, you and of course, I'm not giving due credit to God.
Yeah.
He put you guys in my life for a reason.
Right. Yep. No doubt, man. Yeah. And the bond that was formed around it and all that, no doubt. I wouldn't be quit either.
No, I never would have survived all the ass chewings and ass whoopings and nasty, just repulsive things said to me, on the forums. Had I not had you guys there, that one day, this one fateful day, I can't remember what the topic was, but does it really matter? Where you said, I don't know if you said it in the forum or if you sent me a private message and said that was just uncalled for. What they're doing, I don't agree with what they're doing. And Billy, around that same time, had said something similar. And I realized, you know what? I can do this. This is about me. This is about my quit. Nobody else's. I'm here for the right reason. Screw all these people that don't agree with me or just hate the very sight of my name. I can do this. And had it not been for you and Billy even reaching out that day, even though I had vets every now and then coming out saying, hey, Jim, you can do this. Hang in there. It'll get better. That phrase, it'll get better.
Yeah.
I needed more than just it's going to get better. I needed somebody in my corner with me. And since we don't really have sponsors in Nicotine Quit, you guys, we sponsored each other.
Yeah, I'd say it's a similar kind of thing, but it's more of like accountability brothers. I think, we do sponsor each other, and that's exactly what it is, but it's more on a brotherhood standpoint of, What I found is like in the sponsor thing, in my sponsor relationships, and I try to cultivate the same thing with my sponsees, is that we turn a corner down the road where we're actually even again, and I don't mean to make it a hierarchy, but when you're suffering and you looking up to your sponsor, there is not an evenness there. I looked up at my sponsor like, please help me, dude. And I looked up to him, where when we come into this brotherhood that we have now, we kind of come in, and that's the way it's designed. We come in with them same quit days, and you're coming in and joining hands on an even basis.
Yeah.
But you're right, man. We lean on each other just exactly in the same way that this sponsorship and that happens. There's no way I could do this without that.
Yeah, and it has been quite a ride.
I remember one time, one of the things, and I kept on taking these little hiatuses, and it just kept on putting bad taste in my mouth. And I really do trust my intuition now, and I'm learning to do that. Whatever this higher power, God, whatever name you'll hear nowadays, I've been saying, it's like saying Kleenex, it's just a term for whatever this thing is. We can name it whatever. You can call it Allah. You can call it, you can say that it's Jesus. You can say God. You can say the universe. You can say Mother Nature. Whatever you call it, whatever you want to, man. It's okay with me. I think we're talking about the same thing. Whatever this is that I want to be building my reliance on it, so that I can trust my intuition. I begin to rely on that intuition thing inside me that will point me in the right directions. And there was times during that was saying, there's something wrong here. I don't like, there's energy here that is contrary to the way that I want to operate. I'm trying to operate my life in a different way today. And so like one of the times when we did this, we had a guy come back, and he caved, and he came back. Some guys don't come back until the next month, because join us up. And just for the listeners, they put us in these little groups where we're all within 30 days of the same quit date. So we're experiencing the same kind of stuff together.
A cohort group.
Right.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you slip and you do end up falling back into another group, right? But there was a guy that actually quit and come back in time to stay in our group. And they come in there and start telling us these conditions that we should put him on in order for him to be there. And so, I didn't really know any better, and I took it and I listened to these vets, and they're telling us we need to do this and do that and do this. And then we did all that.
Yeah.
And then when we did it,
said.
and maybe it is this one group. Maybe that's where the problem is too. I'm not totally convinced, but I do know that one group was a cancer and to use their terms, and a corrupt thing. And we found proof of that later on in the fact that they were doing some planning and conniving in the background. And we actually found the documented evidence. I have 700 and something pages of the documented evidence of them actually doing that behind the scenes and being nefarious in their activities, which, that's also another thing that goes, you know what, if that's going on, I don't want to be a part of it. But anyway, we did what they said. And then when we did that to this guy and put these things on, they come in and they beat us up over, why did you do that?
Yes,
so that's the first time that, and I actually have that stuff documented, because I do journaling and stuff today, and I had actually written some things down, and I visited some of that before we spoke here. That was one of the first times that I started going, yeah, man, I'm not really liking what's going on here. And if we're going to do business, we're going to have to do business behind the scenes, because we can't do it out here. I thought you could do it out here in front of everybody, but you can't.
That's when we first
of the council, right? So that's when we started talking behind the scenes. Now, little did I know that, this other group. So I said that this other group was doing it behind the scenes for nefarious purposes, right? They were doing it for evil. Actually, if I just use that term, they were not doing it for the good of the other quitters. When we pulled back and did what we were doing it for the good of our group. We were doing it for our January 2018 group. And that's the reason why we're January 2018 is because that's when we Jim and I said a minute ago, we quit in October. But that in January is when our whole group hit our 100 days. So that's why I it's not a graduating class, but it sort of is. No different than like life is over when you graduate high school. I'm a graduate of 1987. Didn't mean my life ended then. I'm a graduate.
Or that you're quit or anything.
Right, yeah, right. So I'm a January 2018 guy, but I kept on, that was just that's when we hit the 100 days. That's way too many words for that. So, we were doing it for the good of our group. We knew we had to fall back and talk about this stuff. And the fact of the matter was also that we had like 60 people in our group at some point.
We were huge.
Yeah.
And we've remained huge for probably longer than most of the quit groups.
Right. And most of them, frankly, wanted to have nothing to do with the coordination of our group other than to come in and post roll every day. But there's others of us that wanted to play a more active role. And those we pulled back. And then at some point somebody said, why did y'all decide to do that? And I actually have that. I went back and looked at it. And I was taking it off of the Survivor TV show. And what they either say the council has spoken or the tribe has spoken or they said
the tribe
something.
has spoken, yeah.
I don't watch too much TV and that stuff has left me, but I said the count, and I just did it like on the whim. And then right off the bat, they want to know who this council was. Who, what? And, that became a real thorn and I think it actually played into our eventual demise of the website. And we are at like 100 minutes. So, I do like to try to keep these things under 2 hours, but so 20 minutes or so more and we'll be good. But anyway, I don't want to mean to do that. I just want to kind of give a little bookmark of where we're at. Usually when I'm on the podcast, I tell my guest about where we're at. Time just
That's okay. I'm looking at the clock,
man, when we're doing this. So,
dude, we could talk for an entire week.
Yeah, we could. So we did that thing, and it ended up being that, and I just kind of fast forward, not really, but just to capture this part. A number of us, myself, you, and Billy, specifically the three of us, were banned from the website at a certain point in time. And one of the things is they didn't like the fact that we had pulled back and began this council thing where we were basically operating our troops from behind enemy lines, maybe you might say. I don't know if that really makes sense or not, but we knew we couldn't be out there playing in their front yard. That wasn't going to work. So we had to pull back. And we really weren't doing anything besides keeping our guys
there was
marching.
No collusion.
Yeah, and we weren't doing anything bad. We were just making sure that our guys were taken care of and that we were moving along. And, we had things happen like this table roll. Somebody tossed that in our nest one day and we liked it, and nobody else seemed to like that we were doing that.
No, even though other people had it.
Yeah,
they didn't like the fact that we took control of our own quits.
Yeah,
and we did it in a unified effort with a single voice. That's
even though that's
like.
Yeah, and the thing is that's what they wanted us to do. But then
they
didn't like us once we did it.
Right. It was like total double standard.
Yeah.
I mean, you want self-sufficient quitters that want to deliver the message.
Yeah, and we started carrying it into the camps next door, so the February group came to be.
Yeah, we started Catalina wine coolers, wine mixers.
and it all sounds so silly, probably the people out there listening, but as far as these names and this stuff, we were the Fury and the Catalina wine coolers, so you named your group and you did this stuff. And like I said, if you read there's some literature I've read about the forming of groups, and how we become a cohesive unit. And at first we're storming, we're trying to get to know each other, and then we get to this forming where we're actually coming together, and then we become norming where we're actually a fluid unit. We know one another and we kind of can see each other's moves, and we know what we're going to do, and we can anticipate how to take the next step forward. That kind of stuff was going on in these groups, and we began to and we were encouraged to do that too, right? Just like in 12-step stuff, where once you've carried the message, once you've had your own experience and you've got something to carry and to help the next guy down the line, then you're encouraged to go do that. And the same thing, when we did it, we were accused of meddling,
and everybody else got carte blanche.
Yeah, and it just kept on being, and it is an odd dynamic about why we kept on getting that kind of response from them. One of the things I do want to talk about too is that you started writing these narratives, these storylines that were like these.
I read them this morning just for
these fictional accountings of what was going on, although they had a lot of truth in them too.
Oh, it's totally truth-based.
But it was like, but it had the fictional palette that it was painted on,
and the humor.
Yeah,
we poked fun at everybody.
And man, and you'd come out with new episodes of that, man, and everybody would be reading them. If we could have, like when I started doing my quit videos, I was upstairs and did I thought it was funny that we did that we were doing a day count. But today I actually embrace it. At the time, I thought, man, there's got to be more freedom than counting days, man. But anyway, I did that, and people liked it, and I started doing more of them. So I actually could like see how many people was looking at my quit videos because they were YouTube, and it would say this many listens. It'd been interesting to see how many people read the narratives, because everybody would get to talking about them, man. And I mean, and it was so fun, and it was even better probably because I like to read like that, and I would paint this picture. I still have some of those, like those wreckages in these lots in these neighborhoods. It's so broke down, like war-torn neighborhoods that we lived in, and we had like little compounds, January had a compound here, and down the street was February, and Raleigh old, like I don't know, my mind was telling me like the vehicles we were driving around with were reminiscent of like Mad Max type vehicles.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Our entire compound was built around the Mad Max concept.
Yeah, so yeah, you just painted a beautiful picture with those things, and man, that was a blast too.
Who says quitting doesn't? Why it doesn't have to be miserable?
Yeah, it became so fun.
Yeah, I mean we had fun poking fun at each other. We had fun with the narratives, and what did that all equate to? It was taking our minds off of the suck, the nasty addiction that had controlled our lives for decades.
Yeah.
And I mean, we were able to do it and share, and
it was a healthy distraction.
It was, and people from other groups love those stories.
Yep.
And I mean, and we're talking some guys that had years. So one guy, remember Coach Steve? He knew me from my very first quit in 2009.
Yep. And he got
he wrote a couple.
Enticed to come all the way back from well, he had like left pretty much, right? I mean,
he was on a hiatus of sorts.
Yeah, so he'd been not around for a while and kind of, whatever you want to say, maybe burnout or, I think the same thing happens. You get down the road, and you're like, don't need to see more or whatever. And there might be some validity to that. I'm not disputing that, but the fact that we were doing what we were doing looked so fun that he came back for a while,
Yeah, he was Mr. Narrative.
And played along with us, because he'd heard about your narratives and wanted to hear.
Well, he wanted to do it again because back in 2009, he was doing it, and he would include the outspoken characters from the other groups. I can't remember. He was April, I was May. And so he started his narratives, and for some reason, go figure, the Colonel became an active participant or character in his narratives back, way back then. So somebody comes out and says, hey, they called him Fox or FUCS, fuck you, Coach Steve, whatever.
Right, yeah.
Okay, hey, Steve, you got to check this out. Coach, this guy is doing narratives that remind me of yours from 2009. What they didn't realize is that I was a character in his narratives back then.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, I wasn't copying him. I just was like, you know what? There's got to be a way to tell this story without sounding like I'm preaching. I got to make it fun. I got to, see it. Let people see it through my prism, or see us for the the characters that they're painting us out to be. Like me, the Colonel, this whacked out veteran, combat vet. Dog, Mr. Man Glitter, woodworker extraordinaire.
Yeah.
Billy, the disgruntled, who are you again? Fuck you, carry on guy.
Yeah, I always pictured him in some kind of old torn up military outfit too. I don't know why, but I always had him in this disheveled, burned out soldier motif.
the grumpy guy.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how I wrote him. Times 10, right? And it's actually funny you brought up the narratives. It's actually funny that I saw them this morning and read through them again.
Yep, I got a whole folder. I actually have it sitting on my PC right now. I got a whole folder titled KTC, which I just let out the name of it a little bit.
Oh well.
And I got file. There's old SSOAs in here. There was documents. There's little scripts I wrote for my YouTube videos, like the one when I did the WKTC.
The good old days.
Yeah,
yes.
So I have a whole folder of that stuff, and I was looking through some of that same thing this morning too. I put all those narratives all in one big document.
Yeah, and it was fun to read. I read every single one, even the ones submitted by Coach Steve, Billy. Remember Doc Botox from February?
Yep.
Even Josh the Loser, his episode.
I forgot about him, man. JTL. I wonder what that kid's doing now.
Running around naked going, I'm still quit. That's my guess. But I don't, the nicotine quit in this case is kind of like the way you describe your the juice on Tuesdays.
Yeah.
That is just that special day, and you guys take it and you run with it, and you're always jazzed. Well, not having been to one of those meetings, I can definitely attest to the how jazzed you are about that. And I think that's kind of how we felt about the Fury, and specifically the council.
We did.
Because we were going to make it fun. We were going to band together, and by God, nobody was going to get in the way, and nobody's going to spoil our quit, by God.
Yep. And we had each other by the hand. We were quick on defending one another. We were a cohesive unit.
And nothing, I don't think we could have painted any number of different scenarios and different personalities, but I think there was definitely a higher power at work when he threw this messed up group of addicts together in the January group. Every group has that personality, like you mentioned. They've got a personality of their own. But for us, I mean, there was definitely, I would swear there was some divine intervention to put that group together.
Yeah, there was, no doubt about it, man. I was looking at one of the things the other day and saw the names. Had a list of all, because we were all under usernames, and like some people weren't real clear about it, and they just put the real name on. And you know what I mean? Like they just would come in there and they just said Jeff, and other people had, creative usernames and stuff. But, I still stay in touch with quite a few, and I do daily date counts with maybe, and I'd have to look at it, maybe a dozen people. And then you and I and Billy have our own little group me where you and I mostly are the one too that Billy comes in once in a while and he'll chat with us, but he doesn't really post his day count much anymore. I actually went on to the website that we migrated to after. I logged on there last night, and they said when your account's dead, they ban you, or whatever. You remember how they said not ban you, but when you go into an inactive status if you don't post roll there.
Right, and then you got to say, "Mother, may I come back?"
Yeah, but I mean, even on LNF, and maybe that is a Mother May I thing, but my account is still active on there too. So I'm not. I actually posted roll last night. Just for fun,
did you?
And just said, and said hi. I was sitting there, and I thought, well, it felt kind of dumb. It actually felt kind of disingenuous to stick my head in the door and don't say hi. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And it looks like there's maybe like 15 people posting there. That's all.
Wow.
It kind of blew up when we did our little migration after a minute.
And then, it shows you the personalities. I'm telling you, it was based off of the personalities. People did not like that we got banned. So they spoke up. Then they started getting fed up with the personalities as well, and they followed us out there.
Yep,
I'm sure of it. There's no other explanation for why an otherwise inactive site doubles and triples its membership.
Yep,
and that, not meaning that to sound like pride, and because pride, it can be a sin, but that's the truth.
Yep, it is. I was actually going to pull it up and look at it. I know that there's stuff that touched me pretty deeply whenever everything went down, and one of the things was that caveman. I had that whole. I torched my intro once. I poofed my entire 68-page intro when I had that one meltdown weekend. And you were talking
is
about
deletion, by the way.
Yeah, deleted. I deleted my entire and Caveman come back and he went and gathered up all all my YouTube videos and stuff and kind of rebuilt my intro into one post and stuff, you know, and that took hours. I was dreading having to do that. And when I went to get ready to do it, it was already done by him.
Yeah.
He's one of the ones that I've actually got to shake hands with. He's come to Louisville. He's actually in Louisville just a couple of weeks ago, last week, but I wasn't able to connect with him. He was here, and I connected with him once before. You know, I know sooner or later down the road I'm going to be shaking hands with you. I had dinner with Billy a couple of weeks ago. Him and his wife were in town in Louisville with their kids, you know, and the different things that we do. And like I said, this other thing about this maintaining contact with these people, you and I still talk on a daily basis. I'm gonna venture just to say, and you know, there's obviously been a couple of days here and there that has not happened, but we've had daily contact for the past 607 days anyway. It'd be longer than that if I had the 10 more days that you have. But we've had daily contact for those amount of days, and that's kind of miracle stuff, you know, when you end up making a connection with somebody, and especially since we're not even, we're X amount of miles away from one another, that it's all been on a virtual aspect, either through telephone calls or chatting online or texting or that kind of thing.
And if you think about it, the original members of the council, we were literally spread between the two coasts, evenly spread from East Coast to West Coast.
Yep.
You know, until that other guy left.
Yeah.
Well,
yep.
left the council. Well,
right. Yeah.
He stayed on the site.
Yeah, I suppose.
We'll just call that a parting of ways.
I had a little thing the other night about potentially going in and creating a new troll account, and jump back on that old site and just look around again. And then I was like, no, Dan, don't do that. Don't do it. Just stay away. I did pop into, like I said, into the LNF site just to see, and daggone it, I just closed it. But there's probably maybe a dozen people posting on there. Coach East is still posted on there. Looks like he's doing a daily there, and I assume he's still on the other one also. But you know, he was real active in March. It was like the leader of March. March was a month that almost had no activity.
Yeah, we fostered that too.
Yep. And it turned out he just lives right up the street from me. I mean, I can get to his house in 10 minutes.
That's cool stuff.
Yeah. But I guess, you know, I kind of feel like I'm running out of gas a little bit. And
well,
it's actually right on time.
Have we covered everything? Well, not everything.
Right.
Like I said,
I think we have sufficiently covered everything for the moment.
I mean, I would say my quid is strong. Yours is strong. Billy's is strong.
Yeah, I just can't. You know, there's still that, and I will say, there's times that I go across, I'll do something that seems like I went down to the cabin a couple of weeks ago by myself, and actually 2 things happened to me that weekend, and I actually told on myself to my sponsor and my support group and to some quit folks. You know, I actually stood and thought that I had a little minor. I mean, it's just a bullshit thing, but a little minor crisis going on in my life, and a drink and a dip both crossed my radar for the first time in a long, long time.
Yeah, you know what? I'm glad you brought that up, because I wanted to kind of end on that note too. But finish your thought.
And so, you know, the thing is it's you know, again, you know, I know I am never cured of this stuff. It's always going to be there. But what I have today is tools to be able to address it, the awareness to see it for what it is. That is huge for me today to go, yeah, that's what that is, and don't fall for it today. And frankly, you know, we said we have a obsession for a while, and that's what it is, right? When you've got to have that substance in your reach all the time, that is an obsession. I don't really have to. Well, I will tell you, my current obsession is my telephone. That has to be in reach of me all the time. I have some issues around that. I'll look at maybe. It's not having, well, I was getting ready to say it's not having a negative impact on my life, but I'm not so sure that it's not. I could be justifying that too. But anyway, not having to have those other substances within reach of me today is a miracle. To be honest, like I said, that opposite of that obsession to it today is actually I have a repulsion to those things today. Last thing in the world I want to do is pick up any of that stuff that I used to do and begin it again. But
it's
I know
funny
I'm
how
not
it just continues to
immune
pop
to
up.
it. Yeah, I am not immune to going back to it. I promise. I know that. That's why I like when it come across my radar there a few weeks ago. And what happened is I was getting myself into an isolated position to where I was going to be down there by myself. And my disease, the monster, the Nick bitch, the all that's the same thing too. Just like I said, Kleenex and God and higher power. This whole other side of things, whatever that is that talks to me, the addiction, the disease, told me that nobody would know. Yeah. I could go down there and be by myself and go down and work for the weekend, which, in hindsight, if I'd have got some alcohol, I doubt much work would have actually happened. I probably could have got some dip and still worked. But I'd have went down there and worked for the weekend and nobody would be any the wiser. And, what's it going to hurt, right? But no, I'm not doing that.
And many a quit has been killed with that very thought. And what was our big saying? You're always one bad decision away from a day one.
Yep, you are. No doubt. And that goes for all these substances that I have put aside. No doubt, man.
So, I mean, here we're 600 days plus, and I still have those passing thoughts. So, folks, I'll tell you what. There is no such thing as a cure. If you think there is, then you're wrong. We've all proven it. Time and again, we're never cured. No matter how many days quit or how many days sober or how many days clean, you're always just one bad decision away. And I have, I don't have the nicotine dreams that I used to. Yeah. My other attempts. I think I'm so guarded and so steeled up that I don't have those anymore. But I do have the nicotine, the tobacco being offered dreams, the wake up and go, my God, how did I get Copenhagen in my lip dreams? Just all that stuff. And it still happens. And my brother, who's over 10 years quit, says every now and then he still thinks about it.
Yeah.
And that's the craziest thing about any addiction, is that it's never gone. It's always right there and just willing. And that's why we called her the Nick bitch, because, she was ready to pounce on you, and she doesn't care how long you've been quit. She's just ready to reassert herself and catch you when you're at your weakest.
Right. You let your guard down, man. And that's the thing. That's why we always say that, and that's essentially why I post a day count to people, even though whatever it's not, wherever it used to be as far as like number of people and all that, I still post my day count every day to remind me that I have this, and what I explained to my friend the other day was that he goes, well, I don't really understand why you're doing that. And I said, well, to me, it's the same as when what I do is I get up and I talk to my higher power every morning and ask for help.
Read your devotionals.
But really, even the reading and all the rest of it, my core thing is I get up in the morning and in a sense, I'm thanking my higher power for keeping me sober yesterday and asking to help me do it again today. And that's the same thing when I post roll in the morning. What I'm doing is I'm promising to you that, or when I send you a text, well, me and you do it on the group me. When I make these promises to my brothers and sisters in quit, I'm promising you that I won't use today, and you're promising me you won't.
Exactly.
And we're just,
if you miss a day, what happens?
All right, somebody's going to talk to me.
Yeah, I'm coming for you. Yep. And if I miss a day, I want you to come at me too.
Yeah, and actually, I very rarely even. I used to do this little dance where I'd say I'm gonna be at the cabin, so I may not post roll. But today I know post. I will go up. I will get some service, and may not be first thing in the morning like it usually is on my day to day. I may not march out of the cabin first thing in the morning and go up the hill to do it, but I'll catch it here shortly in the morning. So I've even quit saying I'm not going to do that. I might say I might, and I try to let people know I might be a little slow on the draw tomorrow. But yeah, that's that accountability thing too. If I think I'm actually going to be missing in action, I feel some accountability to let you know that ahead of time.
Yep.
Rather than
it's not that hard. Because if you know you're going, you know the challenges that you might face. But everybody that used that excuse, well, I didn't know, or I thought everybody understood that I was going to be away from the fun. How long does it take?
Yeah, no time, man. I can post my role and even, and I'm kind of doing it the hard way because I still send out texts to a dozen or so people, and I post in 2 group me's in the morning. And I mean, I might have it. I think I do it in 90 seconds or so. I get it all done. Yeah. And I go out and include a damn quote with every one of them. So
yeah, that's the other thing you do. I'm just my number.
Yeah, I get it. Now I got 3 numbers, and people ask me what that third one is because I'm on the 100 days of handstands. So today is day number 16. I got of handstands. Trying to find more creative places to do my handstands.
There you go. You keep that up, and
it's all just ways to keep on having fun doing this, and
that was what you used to say too. Gosh, especially in your video roles.
Yeah, if you're not enjoying your quit, it's your own damn fault.
Yes, there you go. And by God, you always made it so much fun.
Yeah, man, it's got to be. It's who wants to do? It comes back to the same thing on the quitting my other life. The nicotine or the booze and the drugs. If I don't have something equally, because that stuff was fun for a long time, man. And if I don't have something that at least when I put that down, if I don't have stuff in my life that replaces that level of enjoyment and fun, if I don't have something cool going on, I will go back to what the other stuff was. Just plain and simple. I got to have something better in my life than what the other thing provided for me.
Yeah, and we can never say never. Well, we can't say we'll never go back.
Yep.
We do it one day at a time,
right.
Just like every other form of recovery.
Yep. And what I found is I'm pretty solid on this feeling. If I do what I did yesterday to keep me sober and clean, quit. Sober, quit, and clean is usually what I say. If I do what it kept me sober, quit, and clean yesterday, if I do that again today, there's a damn good chance I'll be sober, quit, and clean when I lay my head down tonight too.
What is it? Wash, rinse, and repeat.
Yep, that is it, man. No doubt. Yeah, we didn't even get into the 1,000 of acronyms either that was on the site, man.
That's so right. Bad. Hell, that's a whole nother episode.
Yeah, so there were so many of them that there was a freaking library of acronyms because we didn't get into TCIASP.
Oh, no, we didn't. Or WhoopEd.
Yeah, yep.
Wake up, piss, post every damn day. That was it. Yeah, that's even modified from what I understand. They've added yet another string at the end of that.
Oh, really? Yeah, well,
I heard somebody say that.
Cabman had that one that was just a 1,000-letter long one that was never, ever, blah, 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 blah. I always like, I don't know that, and by no means are you allowed to piss before you post. You must post and then piss.
And that, you know what? That was the other.
It was the other way around.
Well, I can't remember.
Me neither.
But the fun thing about the acronyms, that was one way that we as the council started poking fun at these guys.
Yeah,
because of all our acronyms.
Yeah.
Nobody knew what the hell we were talking about.
Yeah, we'd make up new ones, and it'd make them mad because they couldn't figure it out. And I was reading that thing about the TCASP, which is the Colonel is a sanctimonious prick, is what that is. Somebody said that to you one time, and I turned it into an acronym. We started hiding it, and it took a whole day for somebody to figure it out. But Sam RS, however he goes by in Irish, both of those guys went back into the annals of Fury group of the board and found that and put those two things together. That takes some freaking work and
sure does,
and some smarts, to go back in there and pull that all the way back from there. I mean, it was months beforehand that was in some innocuous post back then that had that saying and pull it forward and know what it was. I was on the roof a bunch that day, man, and I don't know why, but that day I was cleaning gutters or doing something. For a good piece of that day, I was on my roof, and I still remember, like, I would sit down on the roof and laugh about it as people were trying to figure out what it said.
It was great. It was a perfect distraction. And what do you need for a nicotine addiction? You need a distraction from it.
Yep.
And we provided lots of it. I mean, not only were we the shitstorm, every single day, lots of people coming in picking fights with us.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of humor in there too.
Yeah.
And people just would come from all these other groups, the new groups, the super old groups, guys that were never active or haven't been active for years, coming in and just to see what mess is happening in the Fury today.
Yep. And when we did, you could see who was in the room because down at the bottom it would tell you who was in there. And, we would come in and start bantering about or whatever, man. And the next thing you know, there'd be a giant group of people in there just observing, watching what's going on, like they're coming to the basketball game or something.
We had the highest post number, highest visitor number. Remember that?
Yep, we did. Yeah. And that's another thing. I looked at my little narrative I wrote the other day because I'd forgotten about this. I wasn't able, when I got banned, and we didn't even go down through that. And I don't know, there's actually a YouTube video out there that explains that pretty good on my Doggone Hunt site of my banning and what happened to me and my story, the way I saw it. But like I went like 10 or 15 days without post and roll, and I was doing it, but I was doing it having people pick me up. And I looked at my post count,
which
my
still
average
counts.
Which still counts. My average post count was still above 20 a day after not posting for that many days. I was like, whoa.
I
man.
remember.
I like traded one addiction for another at some level, being on that thing all the time. Well, man, we are well over the 2-hour mark now. Not well over,
Yes,
but
we
over
are.
a little bit. And it's been a blast. And I'm thinking, some of these things, as we continue down this podcast pipe, we can. These are kind of, I enjoy talking to you. Period. So it'd be fun.
And
I
same
think
here.
it'd be relatively entertaining for others too. I think to listen to some of this stuff. So I wish I could get and I may ask somebody and they'll be putting their membership on the line. I may ask somebody to slip this post in over there and put a link to the podcast over there so those who are interested in it. And I certainly still have all those contacts in my phone too, man. I have an unreal amount of contacts from that site that I probably will share this podcast with, just see if they're interested and have a little fun time to listen. But
They should.
Yep.
I mean, it's still a discussion about recovery.
Yep.
And the fact that we went into it, faced adversity, and came out the other end, even stronger.
Yep. I actually went and did some looking, and I can't find any. I can find a lot of recovery podcasts. Actually, not a lot. I can find quite a few recovery podcasts, and but I don't find. I haven't yet to find anything really that leans on nicotine cessation.
Wow.
Yeah.
So we're actually charting.
We may be. I don't know that because there's a lot of stuff out there, man. And just because I didn't find it, don't mean it don't exist, right?
That's true. But hey, we're gonna write history anyway.
Yeah.
And what I say goes.
Right. Yeah. I'm totally.
Remember, CASP.
Okay. Yep. This is the first ever nicotine quitting podcast in the history of the world. You all have heard it first here. And the first of many more to come. So that's what I was going to get to is that I like doing this, and I don't know how many people I can get on. So maybe it would be a time I've heard feedback that it's really tough to follow more than 3 people on one of these things. But we could add somebody else in, like Billy, or maybe even fool around, see if we get somebody else.
Oh my God!
in
Put
to,
probe on. Whew.
Yeah, to see if he wanted to come in and do a little podcasting too.
Or if nothing else, Dan, I would love to come back.
Me too. Just me too.
Invite.
Yeah, just the two of us would be cool too.
Because there is so much that we couldn't get to.
Yep.
That I think would be of benefit to anybody that wants to quit or is going through quit. Because it gets better. Yep. It does get a little easier, but it's always good to hear somebody else that has gone through it or is currently going through it. So
yeah, I know there's going to be a little bit of resistance to this comment, but in my heart, for me, and I'll say that's where I will distinguish this. For me, I didn't really ever become truly sober until I got that substance out of me. Also, it was covering feelings and covering stuff that it was still, and so it was another level of recovery that keeps on, I can keep on leveling up, to use video game terms, and I'm not even a video game dude, but I can keep on leveling up, and quitting nicotine was a huge level jump for me. I can actually say that looking back, I truly don't feel like I was sober until I got that out of my system.
And I can see where you're coming from on that. And you had an interesting initial exposure to that site, just because it's so different. While the substance is different, the addiction is the same.
Yep.
But I remember, and I will never forget, actually, when you said, "You know what? This shit is hard."
Yep. I thought that I come in thinking I'd quit harder stuff, and this was going to be easy, and I got my stuff handed to me.
Yeah, that was a jaw-dropping moment for me, to be honest, because I thought what you and Billy had endured and quit in your lives, I was like, wow, I don't know, that takes some serious fucking balls to do what these guys did.
And that's one of the other, my ass wasn't just on fire. I didn't have the consequences I had. So I wonder if there wasn't some imbalance there as far as weighting, which one was harder. It seemed harder because I didn't really have to do it in a way. You know,
that's also part of it.
In order to stay out of prison, I had to stop drinking and using, and so those consequences, that was heavy over my head. So at some level, it made it easier. You know, it's like, okay, Dan, pick door A or B. B is go to prison. A is get better. Which one do you want? Well, no shit. I know which one I want, but I didn't have that kind of consequence coming into the nicotine quitting. So that's all.
We'll give the liberals some time. You know, they'll make smoking illegal.
Yep. Yeah. Get you to go to jail for that too.
Oh, wait, I didn't say that. I didn't go political. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. Do you have any, one of the things I do, and I think we kind of did it, but I'm going to do it one more time. I think I've got my closing thoughts in hand, or, you know, I've already spoken my closing thoughts. Is there any closing thoughts, any concluders you want to say before we sign off here? I will say one other thing, too. If you want some help quitting nicotine, you can go to thatspiritualunderground.org, and I can help you personally, and I can hook you up with people who can help you and assist you in getting off of that particular drug. So like I say, all the time, I'm a fairly accessible dude, and I'm easy to find. So if I can help you, I want to do that. Got any the Colonel? Do you have any closing thoughts today?
You know what? I won't say I've said everything, but I'll say I've probably given enough food for thought out. You know, for people to chew on. This can be done, and it ain't. If it was easy, everybody would do it.
Right.
So
very good point.
Yeah, I'm just blessed to have made it as far as I have, and it's a shame that I waited as long as I did to try it. I mean, to actually do it.
Right. Yeah.
So I appreciate you having me here, and I hope to do this again soon.
Yeah, man, it's fun. I like I said, I like to talk to you on the telephone, just jacking with you, just talking. So this is not a lot different than that. So I enjoyed it. It's an honor to have you on here. It's an honor to call you a friend. And
Same here, man.
Continue to, you know, like I said, we're going to have this brotherhood and figure out how to. One of the things I want to figure out how to is shake your hand one of these damn days.
It's going to happen.
Yeah, it'll happen. So, man, thank you for coming on the show. I'm going to do my little commercials on the wrap up. I did that just saying, but still just go to spiritualunderground.org.
And you mentioned something about the bumper music.
Oh, yeah, and we got the bumper music. Oh, yeah, say that once more real quick. Let's just give a few seconds on what that you had a band go.
Well, okay. Basically, a buddy of mine and I, we're both Army guys. I commanded this company. He took it over, but he played guitar, and I played guitar. We got together, drinking beer, and decided we were going to make a band. Unfortunately, it was just the two of us, so the band never happened. But we did write music, and our band name was BDA, which in Army parlance is Battle Damage Assessment. But for us, it meant Bitter, Drunk, and Alone. And the song's name is Collateral Damage, one of my favorites. I started it with a bass riff and the rhythm guitar piece. And my buddy, Greg Barnett, he filled in with all the lead guitar. And then, since we didn't have a drummer when he recorded this, he added a drum machine. So I hope you guys like it. It was a great time. We used to have so much fun.
So there is the commercial around what the music is on the podcast today. Better than I could have done it. And 12-step spiritual recovery, if you're interested in applying 12-step tools and principles into your life to see if it maybe help you find your path, go to Amazon, James Christopher Cone, 12-step spiritual recovery. You can also go to 12stepspiritualrecovery.com and learn about that, or like always, contact me as a last-ditch effort and I'll point you in the right direction. Thanks again, Jim. Love you. Thanks for coming on the show. We'll do it again.
You betcha. Love you too, brother.
Yeah, man. Thank you all for allowing me to participate in my recovery in this manner today. Peace out.